What's up, old souls? This is Reed from Everyman Vintage, and as you can see from that opening montage of tasty vintage guitar and vintage amp goodness, I love me some vintage guitars. I love the way they play, I love the way they sound, I love the way they smell, I love the way they feel. I love them. All right, that's why this channel exists, and I spend a lot of time just thinking about them, thinking about the different tones I can get out of them, thinking about another amp that could get me a different sound or whatever. I love vintage guitars, so don't at the end of this video please accuse me of saying that gear doesn't matter, because it absolutely does, and I love it. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. But this video is about the musician's paradox, the paradox that we all live in. All right, so I love vintage gear, and I would say, based on a lot of experience, that a good vintage guitar or a good vintage amp will beat out a good new guitar or a good new amp any day of the week. That doesn't mean every new instrument is bad, doesn't mean every old instrument is good, and it doesn't mean that a good new instrument won't sound or play better than an average old one. But long story short is this: gear matters. It matters as a musician. But the other side of that is gear doesn't matter. It means nothing. And so how do we live as musicians in this paradox? How do we live in this space where both of those things are true at the same time? Because my point today is they are true. Gear matters, and it doesn't. And so let's start with why gear matters. Now, I want to start there because this is where I live most of the time. Gear matters. It changes the way that I play, changes the way that I interact with my instrument, and all of that translates into what I put out into the world in terms of my creative output. It matters, all right? It is a tool that is used to get me where I need to go. And if you've ever done any kind of woodworking or things of that nature, you know that you can do a lot of things without the appropriate tools, but it's a ginormous pain in the butt. And it doesn't always turn out exactly the way that you want. It may get you there so that other people can say, oh wow, look at that great thing you made, but you will know where that flaw is. You will know what held you back throughout the entire process, and making music is no different. All right, so I may record with this amp or that guitar or whatever. You may not know. You may say, wow, that sounds really good, but on the inside I'm going, man, that just wasn't getting it. I wasn't driving the amp near hard enough on the front end, or I really should have been using a heavier string gauge there, or I should have been playing that part with my fingers instead of a pick or whatever. Like, the point is, like, I'm going to notice things as a musician that you may not notice as a listener or as a consumer of creativity. And so gear matters in that sense. Right? If I'm playing a guitar that inspires me, my playing is going to be inspired. And the listener may not know that. They don't know the deepest recesses of my heart and soul that I'm attempting to express. So how can I expect them to tell a difference? Basically, it makes a difference, and it does. I've lived it. I live it every day. And so it makes a difference. But the problem with that is it literally makes no difference, because here's what we do. We sit there and we talk about this. We ask our favorite players, or we read articles about them online about what strings they use, or what pickups they use, or what tube substitution have they used in their amplifier, or what picks are they, blah, 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 and none of it matters. You are not going to sound like your favorite guitar player, and that's a beautiful thing. The way that I play may not be great, it may not be for you, but what I can tell you is it is me. And it's primarily me trying to sound like my heroes and failing miserably to do so. And you just got to own that fact, because you're not going to be them. And sitting there worrying about the gear isn't going to make you a better player. In fact, the time that you are worried about that gear is time you could have been woodshedding to become a better musician and to be able to express yourself more completely and be a more articulate, creative person. So gear matters. It does. I love it. It's why that montage is at the beginning of this video. But at the end of the day, talking about it doesn't do anything, and it's not going to get you there. I'm not saying you shouldn't ask those questions, but what I'm saying is you got to get comfortable in the paradox of the fact that gear matters, and you got to choose and have the right tools, but gear doesn't matter if you can't play. All right, and gear is not going to make you sound better or make you sound like somebody else, because what you're going to do subconsciously as a musician, you're going to grab that instrument and you're going to start playing it, and your fingers and your hands and everything is going to start searching for that sound that your ear wants to hear. And it's going to figure out a way to produce that on anything. One of my favorite examples is Tony Rice, who's one of my all-time favorite guitar players, and I defy you to find an acoustic guitar player with better tone than that. He is famous for playing this beautiful 1935 Martin D28 that used to belong to Clarence White, and it's just this thing. It's called the Antique. There are articles written about it. It's got so much lore. It's as famous as he is. I know a lot of people. I've been in the presence of that guitar many times. I photographed it, but I never got the chance to play it. But I know a bunch of people that have, and they say only Tony makes it sound like that. And the crazy thing is in the late 70s, Tony Rice endorsed Ovations. And if you want to try to compare a guitar with a plastic back to a 1935 Martin D28, I mean, I can't even have a conversation with you yet. I've heard Tony play that stuff, and it sounds like Tony. Because he's going to make it sound like him, and you're going to make it sound like you. Does gear matter? You better believe it. And no, it doesn't. So at the end of the day, what you got to do is count it off. There was a good friend of mine, I did a Storytown videos on one of his guitars. He used to always say when I'd be geeking out on this stuff, he'd say, yeah, but do you know the second verse to Let's Be Sweethearts Again? And I know that doesn't mean anything to you, and you may not know that song, but what he was saying was, shut up talking about gear and go learn to be a musician and play. And there's a lot of wisdom in that statement. I'm not saying that the pursuit of finer gear or the tools you need to express yourself, I'm not saying that's not a worthwhile pursuit, but it has to be tempered with the fact that at the end of the day, you need to make music with that tool. And the time that we spend talking and debating on YouTube and on the internet about this time we could have spent honing our craft. And so basically I leave it up to this. Count it off. Because ultimately that's where it all shines through. Count it off and play the daggone song. That's it. Alright, so if you've enjoyed this video or this video's made you mad, please comment in the section. What do you think? Does gear matter? Does it not matter? Where do you fall on that spectrum? Gear matters. It's everything. Gear doesn't mean anything. Where are you in that? I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. And so if you've liked this video or not, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell button. I'd love for you to see the other great vintage guitar content I've got up on my channel, and a lot more great stuff that's in the works. So thanks for watching. I'm Reed from Everyman Vintage. We'll see you next time.